So far, we've been talking about the places we grew up in, Leatherhead and Aberdeen, and the stories that came from there. But now we're somewhere else. These days, we're both living in Edinburgh, a city that's known for its history, its old streets, and of course, lots of ghost stories. So in this episode, we wanted to take a look at what's been reported here and whether it feels any different when it's happening a bit closer to home.
I keep the hallway light on, but the shadows never fade. Every corner whispers secrets of the choices that I made. There's a tapping at the window, though the wind is standing still, and a chill runs down my spine like something moving at its will. I tell myself it's nothing, just the creaking of the floor. But every night the silence feels louder than before. Lights on, still scared. You can't hide from what's already here. Can't run, can't breathe. Something in the dark remembers me. No matter what I do, that feeling doesn't go away. Lights on, still scared. The hauntings never
Well, hello, how are you doing?
I'm fine.
Nice to see you back.
Yes, we're back.
Back.
So we have done Leatherhead and we've done Aberdeen,
We have.
our hometowns. So now we are doing Edinburgh, where we both live.
Yes, yes. Current home, Edinburgh. Most haunted city in Europe.
Indeed, I'm sure loads of people have heard stories about Edinburgh.
Yes. Edinburgh's a very interesting city, of course, given its age and its history. And it's meant to be very haunted. But one thing I would say about Edinburgh, it's interesting is for me as a guide, listening to other people's stories, because the stories themselves, or some of them at least, tend to get a little exaggerated, some of them, but there's so many good things here. And I've had a few experiences here, which I would say are personal experiences, and definitely not easy to explain. So if you don't mind, I'm going to dive into some Edinburgh spooky stories now and see what you think. Okay. So the first one tonight we're going to talk about is the witchery at the castle.
I've been there.
Yes.
I have been there. Yes.
Do you remember the room, can I ask?
I went to the restaurant. I didn't actually go to the hotel.
Was it nice?
My husband complained about the candles because there's a lot of candles and he's very, very hot. So I was expecting a nice romance with candles, but no, he was getting very hot and sweaty.
Yes. I didn't read that in the reviews.
But no,
I'm glad you brought this up.
But I mean, the restaurant itself has got certainly an atmosphere, isn't it?
It does.
It's dark. And I think they do play on it a bit, so it's quite dark.
They do play on a bit, yeah. There's meant to be beams there with little witch symbols on it and all that kind of thing. And whether they're actually from the time of the witch trials or executions or not, I do not know and cannot say because I wasn't there. But that's the thing of it. But the witchery, yeah, it's an interesting place. Now, the witchery, as you're probably well aware, started off as a restaurant. And subsequently became a hotel, a high-end hotel, or at least a high-end suite of rooms, if you like. And each suite of rooms has a theme. So you've got one called the library, full of books. You've got one called the rectory, I believe, which is like church paraphernalia. That's the right word to use. And such like. And and eventually, of course, they took over Jolly's Close, which is the building opposite. So there's two parts to the witchery.
Yeah, okay.
And back in the 1980s, a certain guy called Charles Cameron, who owned or at least ran the Edinburgh Wax Museum, used to work with the owner, James Thompson, and put on little witchery kind of events, I believe. And they did at one time have the effigy of a witch in the restaurant, which I did not realise. And it was meant to be spooky. And they played up on that somewhat. And on one occasion in Halloween, they decided to have, I think they had like what one would describe as a kind of medium, but I don't know if it was I would say a real medium, but as opposed to somebody who's putting on a show of some description. And the person was doing some fake seance or something like it. At least this was what's recorded in the newspapers. And an incident occurred which made them stop doing that again. And what that incident was, I don't know, because the paper didn't specify, but they all got scared and the customers got scared. Yeah. So they stopped doing that kind of thing. Anyway, it's meant to have a reputation as being haunted. And I stayed there. I've actually stayed there a few times. I'm not being boastful. This is many years ago, and it was a hell of a lot cheaper then. So,
I was going to say.
No, not now. Jesus.
It's very expensive to stay there now.
It's very expensive. Very beautiful, but expensive. But back 30 years ago when I was married, we stayed there. It was just about affordable. And we stayed there for one night. And we stayed in Jolly's Close in the Armoury Suite, which is full of like memorabilia connected to the military. Mm-hmm. And we were leaving the second day, and this gentleman appeared, and his name was Roxy. And very lovely guy, and he'd worked there for some time, I believe. And he said, "Folks, I've got a wee surprise for you," and gave me a brown envelope. And on the envelope, or in the envelope, was a free night, like a gift card. We got a free night from our friends in Aberdeen, which I'm mentioning again. And they were lovely, and I was so delighted. So thank you very much, friends. I've never forgotten it. And I ended up staying the second night, but it was a bit weird. Because, you know, when you get that feeling up in the back of the neck and the hair goes up and the creepiness, that's kind of what it was like. And if my memory serves me correctly, Carol, who's quite sensitive to these things and a spiritual healer, was not overly enamoured with the vibe of the place and had gone to bed. And I had stayed up, or couldn't sleep, I can't remember. I think I'd stayed up anyhow. But what I do remember was I went to get tea. Now, it was quite late. And when you leave the bedroom, you head down a corridor, and on your your left-hand side, there are 3 windows or 2 windows overlooking kind of like whatever's below. It's like a courtyard. On the right, you've got like a wee seating area. I think the bath was there in one of the alcoves. And then you've got the bathroom and kitchen, toilet, as it were, round the corridor. And I went and got tea. And I'm coming back, and I'm at the bedroom door with the tea, you know, trying to get in. And a ghost dog ran round the corner. But I could hear it, first of all, scraping, which kind of got me a bit thinking, what's round the corner?
Right, okay.
And this dog appeared, and it's really weird. And all I can describe it as is like a deerhound or wolfhound. It was bloody big. And it just literally appeared. And, you know, my brain hadn't quite clicked in at that point, like, why is there a dog in the room? But it was actually at my feet within like a nanosecond. It just went boom, boom, like that. And I remember the tea spilling everywhere, because it did, because I got a shock. And the dog, of course, vanished. And I bolted into the bedroom. And it was strange, because Carol was still sleeping, and I never woke her up. I just sort of got in the bed. I sort of lay there, like, you know, peering out from the covers. A lone eye roving in the room. And fell asleep eventually. And in the morning, Carol said to me, "How did you sleep?" And I said, "Well, not very well." And I explained what had happened. And she countered that with, "Well, I saw a guy wandering about at the foot of the bed. It was dark, but, you know, she could see the shadow moving about, and then she would stand staring." And that was our evening, which was, you know, unusual. So basically what happened was we eventually, when the breakfast arrived, said to Roxy, "Is it haunted?" And he said, "Well, yes, because all his associates had seen similar things."
Right.
Not the dog, but interestingly, things like when you made the bed and you would go and get teas and coffees, there's kind of cupboards outside the rooms, you can replenish stock. They'd go back in the room and somebody had either lain on the bed and created an imprint, or the bedclothes had been pulled back And so this was quite a regular occurrence. In fact, one mate of his seemed to just happen to this guy consistently till he actually asked it to stop, and which it did. But he was at the point of quitting his job. So this is kind of interesting phenomenon. He did also say that a couple had arrived in the same room that we'd been in and lasted about like half an hour before the woman got freaked out and sort of demanded, a different room. I don't even know if she used that as an excuse that it was haunted, but I would imagine the concierge would have raised an eyebrow or two at the thought.
So what was the room felt like on the first night? 'Cause you were there
Normal.
the first night. It was perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's weird because, it did feel that. I think it felt kind of... It was interesting because there's a lot of old stuff in it that's obviously reclaimed stuff and stuff that's obviously new but made to look old, I guess. It might be a combo of the both, I don't know. But it certainly felt okay.
Right.
Second night felt a bit kind of bristly, a bit weird. But it was strange because actually, because I ended up, years later moving here and got a job as a guide. And I remember, well, I don't know, 4 years ago, whatever it was, I was sort of doing Airbnb stuff. And it wasn't like, a rip-roaring success, but I was doing a few things. And this lady had signed up for the tour, and it used to be like a 2-hour ghost tour. But she was from America, and she was a medium, you see. So she said quite early on, well, I'm a medium. And I thought, fair enough. So we went around, and she was sort of saying things as we went around, this would have been a such and such, or I felt this. It was interesting because, she'd never been in Edinburgh before, but she was certainly picking up on what historically we knew to be true. So we get to the witchery, and I told the story. And it's quite a funny story, because, I did drop the tea and screech out of me like a scalded cat and all that kind of thing, as you do. And I was explaining all this to her, and she was like, oh, this is very interesting. She said, well, I'll tell you why the dog was there. Because she didn't say, well, that's all crap, She said, I'll tell you why the dog's there. The dog was there because there's an object in the room that belonged to its owner. And so the dog comes back because it's attracted to the object.
Right, yeah.
So, okay, what object? Well, it's a hat, she said, but it's the middle one of 3, and it sits in a cabinet at the foot of the bed. And there were 3 hats, as far as I remember, at the foot of the bed. And I had been wearing one when I was drunk, taking selfies, which learned me a lesson. So, folks, if you're ever in a hotel and you see a hat, don't pick it up.
Don't pick the hat up.
But I thought, wow, that's kind of weird and mind-blowing and random, but it kind of made me think, well, yeah, maybe there's something to it.
Those kind of dogs, they're not small dogs. They're big dogs.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned earlier on, that's the kind of dog I want. So that maybe was why.
Yeah.
But it was a big dog, yeah, and it was interesting. But yeah, all sorts of hijinks up there over the years from people who've said they've seen things. And it was really interesting to get a story sort of corroborated, if you like, from somebody who's more spiritually inclined, shall we say. That was interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the Royal Mile's got tons of stories, but obviously many you have to probably take with an enormous grain of salt. I think one that's often repeated is the one about the drummer boy underneath the Edinburgh Castle.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Which is a difficult one to, because there's obviously been no evidence of it. And also, is there a tunnel under there? Well, I don't know. But does anybody
Rumours that there's tunnels, isn't there?
There are rumours there's
There's meant to be
tunnels.
rumours of tunnels from the castle down to Holyrood Palace.
Yes.
But
If I was the person in charge and I had the wherewithal to do it, I'd be wanting to get in there and have a look. I'd be curious. But, it's one of these things that remains a mystery. And there are obviously tunnels that are open to the public, like South Bridge and Mary King's and all that kind of thing. And God only knows, there must be tons of other things. I mean, look at the Lost Close recently, which had been kind of buried under rubble for about 200 years.
Yeah.
It's been, so there are things there to be found. Interesting. But as you walk down the Royal Mile and you get to places, like one of Edinburgh's most haunted streets, which is obviously Niddry Street, or they assume anyway, you've got the Tron Church. And there's a really good story from the Tron Church that was personally given to by a policeman, an ex-policeman called Graham, funnily enough. And he's doing an art class, and this guy used to come along. He's from Newcastle, really sound guy. And he gave me the story and handwrote it out for me, very nice guy, explaining what happened to 2 colleagues in the mid-90s in Edinburgh at the Tron. And basically this is it. It was 2 people patrolling, male, female officer, snowy night, really deep snow, nobody around. And so they're plodding down the street. God, I don't even know if policemen plod about the street anymore, but they did then, and they're plodding down the street in this god-awful weather. And there was 2 boys with shorts and caps in old-fashioned clothing playing in the snow at the Tron steps. And, of course, they stood there and they thought, well, this is a bit unusual. One, it's, the middle of the night, and these boys don't look like they're wearing clothes from this era. And the boys were sort of apparently throwing the snow up in the air, but there was no sound. And so they sort of momentarily stopped and looked, and then thought, oh. So they approached the boys, and they took off round the corner. And, of course, the police followed them. But the thing is, when they got round the corner on Nidri Street, they were gone. And, of course, there was no footprints in the snow. Oh. So they went back to the station and told their colleagues and got laughed out the door. Mm-hmm. So I did a talk years ago, and I was telling the very story, in fact, and this person, Lindsay, came across and said, oh, yeah, my dad was there at the police station at the time when the police came in and said this is what happened, and he just thought it was cobblers, shall we say, but he was there, and this is what they reported, and he saw 2 boys. Mm-hmm. And that is a true story. And who they were, I have no idea, but who knows? These things just randomly happen or don't happen, as you know. But that was interesting.
Very interesting, yeah. I mean, that's a very creepy place anyway, the Tron. I'm not keen, I must admit. I mean, it's a nice little like marketplace.
Yeah, it's very sweet, yeah.
But yeah, there's something about the Tron that's a bit...
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? It's I remember when it used to be when it was when they found the remains of what was Marlin's Wynd underneath it. Remember, it was a little bridge you could walk around and see. Sort of excavations of old streets. There was a skeletal rat. I always found that very intriguing, sort of lying there, like, charming. But it was kind of interesting. It was interesting, and then of course the craft here, which is lovely. But I did like it as the old. It did feel creepy. It did feel creepy, but all that's still there, which I always find interesting when you're walking about, thinking all that stuff is still lurking around there. Yeah. I don't know. So I kind of segueing into here slightly, as you do.
Where are you taking us now?
Well, I'm in Nidri Street.
You're in Nidri Street.
I'm still there, and I'm not
What's in
moving
Nidri
because I'm going to the pub.
Oh,
Where do they go at the pub?
Let's go to the pub.
So there's a lot of good pubs in Nidri Street. Bannerman's is good. Whistle Binky's is good. But my old favourite, you know the one.
I know the one.
Banshee Labyrinth.
Banshee.
Banshee. God bless the Banshee. It's great. The Banshee is built partially into the vaults, so you've got like a sort of like vaulted chambers in there, and you've got the old cinema, which is meant to be haunted with it's got 40 seats. You can watch a movie in a vaulted 1780s or thereabouts cinema, which I think is fabulous. Not the cinema from 1780 because it didn't exist, but the space. I don't want any pedants getting on to me about this, going, no, this is not true. There was no cinemas back then.
Well, there would be many films going on in the 1780s. I don't
know. What about like shadow puppets, probably, or something like that. But anyway, it was a creepy, who knows, but it was a creepy place. And I've been there a few times in investigations, which has always been interesting. But I've got some interesting stories from there. And there was one that I was told, again, a personal story, told by a lady called Kirsty, who's a pal of my wife's, and she had a weird experience there. Now, they say the building was built on the site of a witch torturer's house, a friend of King Charles the Sixth. Sorry, King Charles, not King Charles. Forgive me, Your Majesty.
You're not going to get knives.
King James the Sixth of Scotland. And he's witch obsessive. So basically what you had going on here was this guy who was the witch torturer for the king, living in this area. And so the pub was known as the Lord Nicol Edward, because that was him. Now there's always a lot of debate, is this really the case or whatever, but it was called the Lord Nicol Edward. And the ghost, they think might be him, is called the Watcher. And of course, anybody who knows anything about Edinburgh spooky stories knows that the Watcher is a kind of omnipresent spirit in the street, and he's been seen across various pubs, and he's been seen in the vaults, blah, blah, blah. But he's always this shadowy figure that stands in the background. Interesting. But in this particular occasion, he was seen in all his full glory, if it is him, by Kirsty, who was cleaning glasses, at closing time in the pub. And if you've been there, it's got about 5 or 6 rooms. So it is, as the name implies, a labyrinth.
It is a little bit of a labyrinth.
It's a labyrinth. Yes. I always get lost in that
get lost. I go outside and then I some kind of torture chamber, and I'm
Exactly.
thinking, no, I've gone the wrong way.
I think that might be the wrong pub you're
I
in.
think it might be.
But we won't go into that.
Oh, what's that? Yeah, let's go into
No,
that.
you're right. It's full of like creepy dungeon-esque kind of things. But I've got torture instruments there. Yeah. Sort of pulls the room together. But anyway, this is the issue of the place. It's a lot of rooms, and she's cleaning glasses on her own, and her friends upstairs are counting money or doing the books, as it were, in the room where the CCTV cameras banks are stationed. So I've been in it, and you can see pretty much every shred of the building. And he's standing there watching Kirsty cleaning glasses until she stops and turns around and begins to look at the wall. And she's standing there for some time looking at the wall, you know, mesmerised, as it were. And he's like wondering what the hell's going on, and he goes down to see what's going on. And of course, the spell, as it were, is broken. And she's been standing watching a guy watch her. And the guy had appeared behind her and had his hand on the bar, and he had silver rings and great big hairy hands, and you know, he's solid, but he's wearing obviously what she thought initially was some kind of costume, but she couldn't remember what his face was like. I don't know if that was because it didn't exist, which would be terrifying, or it was just blotted out her memory, but everything else was kind of solid. And then I had to go home, obviously quite upset, I would imagine, and obviously extremely anxious, because, you know, would this entity go home with her, which actually people claim has happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So anyway, she ends up going back and had to hand in her notice after a small, you know, because, you know, this idea of bumping into this figure again is pretty creepy. So that's what happened. And so the Watcher is seen around there quite often. And of course, when there's been investigations, and we have been on one together some months back while we were on a tour, and this male energy, this angry voice, this has been recorded frequently in certain rooms. So I do remember one instance recently where he seemed to be almost apologetic for this vent, but he was a sort of misogynistic spirit. So is it Lornical Levers? I have no clue. But that is the gist of it. Also, there is a haunted toilet, which, you know, every good pub should have.
Yes, indeed.
Except this one, interestingly, when it became a unisex toilet recently, the hauntings have decreased, which is interesting.
Now, which is interesting you say about the toilet, because when we were on that little tour there,
Yes.
I did have an experience in the toilet.
Really?
I do believe, yes. I was like, wanted to go, as you do. And I said to one of the ladies we were with her, she said, well, you can't go into the main one.
Yeah.
She said, there's loads of urinals in there. That's the men's.
Yeah.
Obviously, she wasn't aware that it was a joint one, and I wasn't aware either.
Yeah.
And there's the disabled one next door.
Right.
So I said, well, I'll go into there.
Yes.
So I went into there.
Yes.
And obviously done what I needed to do. And I was washing my hands, and the lights started to go.
Right.
And I thought, oh. And then as I was about to go out, the lock, it felt like it wouldn't open. And then all of a sudden it opened.
Ooh.
So I said to the manager, because she was opposite, and I went into and I completely forgot that you'd said about that. And I said, is there anything going on in the loos?
Yeah.
She went, oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, if I stayed there any longer, perhaps there would have been hijinks. But I
There
thought,
would have been
that's
hijinks.
enough.
There would have
As
been
I
a manifestation, which you don't want in the toilet, trust me. But SJ's really, well, she was lovely. She's the manager. She gave me tons of good stories. And she did talk about the toilet, of course, because it is a thing. And the lock, as you rightly mentioned, I'm glad you did mention this, because I didn't know this, is one of the most common phenomenon. The lock, getting locked in, or the lock
Because
opening.
You get a bit panicky.
Yeah.
Locked in.
But I've also heard that sometimes the doors have been unlocked and opened when people have been,
Esme did say he's got this thing about women.
Yes.
That's probably why it's decreased so much, because
Yeah.
obviously there's men in there as
There's
well.
men in there now. Yeah.
But
They
as I
call
was
him Jock, so he's not maybe the Watcher, he's maybe another guy. But I don't know who he is, and I don't know who called him Jock to begin with. But anyway, it's him.
I feel he's a bit of a mischievous ghost rather than
Yeah, malevolent.
malevolent. Yeah, I think he just obviously likes the ladies.
Well, it's weird you should say that because actually, some years ago, I sent a couple. I recommended that pub to a couple who were on my tour, and they I think they're from Reading, if I remember correctly, and they were nice folk. And I said, I always give good pub recommendations. I said, oh, you should go to the pub, blah blah blah. And they were like, oh, we might do. And, you never see them again. So you don't know what the hell they got up to. So they'd obviously gone off and done their thing. But I do remember the next day standing at the meeting point, and the woman sort of marched down comically towards me, like putting on a kind of a show, staring at me, and said, why did you not tell me about the haunted toilet? Because we went to the pub under your recommendation. And I was like, oh, crikey, because it wasn't a ghost tour, and I never thought, I didn't think they need, because I didn't think they'd go, but they did go, and she had a kind of similar experience to you. Except this time, she had a bag wrenched off her shoulder, but it had been pinned on to her lapel by her husband. Okay. And she went at great pains and lengths to show me, she did an operation on her hands. She was really, I think it was arthritis or something, but she couldn't make a fist. So the husband had to pin the lapel, the bag onto the lapel, otherwise it's going to drop off. It's like a man bag type thing. But anyway, she's washing her hands. And someone came in behind her and unclipped the old clip, and the bag was wheeled to the floor, as they say. Ooh. And she left rather rapidly after that. And that's a true story. So there you go. And
there's also another story of a little girl there as well.
Yes, that's correct. That's the shoe up the chimney story, which is so apparently the shoe was found with the name Molly in it. Well, I don't know where the shoe is now. I've never asked, to be honest. But the story is the shoe was found up a chimney, which was not an uncommon thing to ward off witchcraft, as you know. But the point being was, when the shoe was found, a small spirit began to manifest in the area and was seen by certain members of staff running around. There was also a guy, I believe, who stayed overnight there, who was a manager, who woke up in the middle of the night lying in one of the rooms. I think potentially one of those downstairs, was it the Mary Queen of Scots room? I can't remember offhand. There's so many different rooms. But there was something above him looking at him while he was sleeping, and he sprang up through whatever the figure was. And staff don't tend to sleep there anymore because he'd missed his bus. But I think the creepiest story for me was the one when I believe the current folk that own it were doing it up after it was the Lord Nicola Edwards, and I think they brought their kid with them, a wee girl. And she was insistent that there was a man on fire standing at the door and kept saying, Daddy or Mummy, who's the fireman? Who is the man on fire at the door? And of course people said, oh, the Great Fire of Edinburgh, blah, 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 which was actually in the vicinity thereof. I'm not saying it was that street, but I thought it was quite interesting. And she was insistent that's what was there, and apparently they downed tools and took a short, and legged it. Yeah, took a brief lunch break, as it were, to avoid any more nastiness. But what an interesting place. And the funny thing is, a lot of people go there and they see because it's done up like a horror themed bar, and they see all that like a dive bar, and they think, well, this has got to be absolute rot because it's all gimmick, it's all this. But honestly, out of every pub I've been in, for me personally, looking beyond that, I think there's the most evidence I've seen, witnessed there for just stuff happening. It's definitely got a something, and it's not just all talk. There's definitely something. Fascinating place.
Yeah, I mean, when we were there, we done like a little spirit box
thing,
and one of the things that I found quite interesting was at the very end, we actually heard a cry of a girl, and we all went, "That's a bit weird."
Yes. That's
so
right.
So that kind of like ties in with all the stories of the young girl spirit, I think.
Yeah, it is very, very odd. But like typically any place, most people will go there and have a pint and not see anything, and obviously nothing much tends to happen. All the noise and raucousness. It's when you're on your own. And I remember Ezzy told me a great story. She said she was actually in the office one night. I think it was her anyway, at least, and she was looking at the camera. You could see different rooms. And she could feel something like pressing outside the door of the office, like almost like this heavy breathing sound. But she was watching it through the camera, and there was nothing there, which I thought was really disturbing. It would have put me right off.
That is definitely lights on, still scared moment.
Indeed it is, yeah. Lights on all the time moment, I think, yeah. But it's a great bar. So looking forward to further further investigations and further stories. Yeah, they seem to just be coming thick and fast there, and jolly good. But yeah, the toilet may be not so haunted these days.
Indeed. Unless you go in there on your own.
Yeah, don't go on your own. Well, yeah, you should go on your own. Well, you can go in with people, but not necessarily people because that'd be... Anyway, we won't go into
Yeah,
that.
anyway,
I
that's
don't
a
know where I'm going with
completely
this.
different podcast.
It is. They're interesting toilets. I mean, I suppose they're not the most luxurious, but then it's a dive bar, isn't it? They're not going to be like, the Ritz.
Anyway, what's next, Graham?
What's next? Ooh, well, I'm going to segue. Not segue. I'm just going to spring across the Cowgate and go into Greyfriars, because obviously most people talk about Edinburgh won't hear about Greyfriars Cemetery
That's very
because
true.
its reputation.
Yeah.
But is it as haunted as they say? Because literally there has been a multitude of books, podcasts, films, you name it, centred on what is supposed to be the most haunted area in Europe. And I don't know the answer, because honestly, I've heard some pretty intriguing stories and I've seen a couple of intriguing things, but I don't know if it warrants the amount of sheer terror that inspires the main ghost, if you like, which actually isn't a ghost, it's a poltergeist, Mackenzie poltergeist. So obviously a poltergeist is an energy, that's usually a person, which is probably created by that person, rather than an actual spirit. But anyway, it stuck, and Mackenzie, of course, was Lord Advocate of Scotland, and he was I suppose a hanging judge, we'll call him that for the sake of ease, who oversaw from a distance, because I think he was in London at the time, but was responsible for the deaths of many Covenanters who were kept in the prison, which is still there at the back, which is now locked and gated and owned by a company, I think, called City of the Dead, who do the kind of ghost tours there. It's an interesting area. And there's a mausoleum in there. It's meant to be very haunted, but it's got no relation to him in any shape or form. So this has been the common theory. It's him for years. And in fact, there's a great documentary by the BBC called Hauntings, which presented an hour-long programme on that very subject last year, which is interesting. And of course, interviews a lot of the main players, and the stories, keep going as they do. But I don't know. I've been there a lot in 7 years. I could count a handful of times when anything remotely spooky happened. There's a couple of times when something definitely did happen. But it is interesting. People today think that perhaps he isn't nothing to do with it. He's not the ghost whatsoever.
Do I was about to say that, because my experience when we went there, I've had this a few times where it's been a little bit too spooky, where my spooky sense is going, no, you're not going there, love.
Yeah.
And when we went in there, I was halfway round the Kirkyard, and we were heading towards the Covenant prison.
Right.
And there's something just literally made me say, you're not going anywhere near that. No. So it's quite a strong energy there as well. And of course, they all wanted to do a photograph, didn't they, there?
They did.
And I said, no.
Yeah.
And they go, why aren't you? It's sheer fact that there is a lot of energy there. And if there's anything that's going to haunt that graveyard, I think it's what's coming from there rather than Mackenzie.
Yes, I have come round to that conclusion myself, mainly because my personal experiences were there at the spot, as was my wife's, as was many people's. And so the energy from there, they suggest, is the energy of the despair, perhaps, of the many people in there who died. And we obviously don't know the exact figures because, well, they didn't keep records, I guess. So, if you're talking about 1,200 men or whatever it was there for 5 months during winter time in the cold, with barely enough to survive food-wise, never mind shelter, well, there's a lot of people going to die before they even reach the gallows. So, this is a pretty horrible area.
Yeah.
And there's been a few times when things have happened. I mean, after lockdown, when you could sort of walk more than 10 yards without being arrested, we went up, me and my wife, to Greyfriars just for a look around. And it was a summer's day. It was June, I remember. It was nice. It was a pretty sunny day and looked great. So I wondered about it. And I was doing a YouTube thing at the time, which was abandoned. But anyway, we were there doing it, and she felt somebody grab her shoulder, quite a firm enough grasp, well, enough to make her kind of scream, if you like, and sort of come behind me. And the pair of us were sort of staring. And it is really weird to think, because when somebody else reacts like that, I get a little scared. So we stood there like looking, thinking, what is going on? Because there's nothing, you know, what if there is something there? What's it going to do next? If it can grab your shoulder, what else can it do? You know, it's quite a terrifying thought. But there was nothing. So we sort of scuttled off, had a sort of conflab at the gate, came back, and then decided to carry on manfully with the story, albeit slightly anxiously. And, of course, nothing happened. But that was one example, and that was a proper good old grab. And then I've been on a tour in there, you know, at the Black Mausoleum with, again, Carol and the kids, or at least my youngest daughter, if I remember, Jerry, in at the time. And, yeah, nothing happened at that point. I can't remember if my eldest tablet was there either. I can't honestly remember. But anyway, one of them was there, and it didn't happen, nothing. So it was kind of like a weird scenario, because there's an expectation. You're going on a haunted tour. You really want something to happen. Well, most people do, I think, and it tends not to happen. So you come away thinking, play me. But then it just shows you that spirit, if it does exist, well, I believe it does, but it depends your point of view.
Yeah.
If it's going to manifest itself just because you want it to, you know, kind of thing. But anyway, that was the experience. Strangely, one of my friends, who's a Spanish guide, described a very different apparition, because he was there apparently with two girls, friends of his, and they were having a wee drink, and he said to me that, you know, one of them had gone off to use the old facilities, which I might add are non-existent in the cemetery, so they're going to find a spot, as it were, and found this, or saw a girl in white, like a young girl walking amongst the headstones, and sort of followed for a short distance, but the girl went through the headstone. And so when her friend never came back, the pair that were still waiting got a bit anxious and went looking, and found her outside the actual churchyard in the street, very upset because of what she'd seen. So I do not know. There is certainly something.
Yeah.
But like you say, probably graveyards tend to be probably the least haunted places, I think.
Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? 'Cause, I mean, that's a place where you're meant to be at rest, isn't
Yes,
it?
I know. What is interesting, and I'm sure you all know this, is that the guy who initially wrote the books about, you know, the Mackenzie poltergeist, I think it was called The Ghost Who Haunted Itself, I think. Jan Andrew Henderson lived on next to the cemetery, and apparently a fire broke out and destroyed a lot of his evidence he'd gathered, because he was documenting supposed poltergeist attacks on people, which still continue to this day. And it is an odd thing. I have a photograph on my phone that I frequently show on tours that people, and I kind of laugh about it because it is a kind of vaguely amusing story, but probably not for the guy, to be fair. But we were doing a tour, and at the end, this guy and his wife, who were from England, had come up on holiday, had claimed, or he claimed he'd seen something in this open mausoleum, which is the one right next to the gated area. And would I come back and look? That's where that photograph is taken.
Right.
So we went back and had a look, because I thought, well, why not, you know? And he was describing, or his wife was describing, I should say, because he didn't say too much about it, but she was certainly describing seeing a man sitting on the ground with his knees up round his chin, hugging his knees like he was trying to keep warm, but wearing a white, frilly, open shirt, you know, with the cuffs. Which is really interesting, because that obviously would have been the kind of dress.
That would tie in with
and they would have been huddling, I'm sure. So he saw this, and then he got scratched on the back, and he felt like a finger go down his spine. It wasn't particularly painful at the time, but it did freak him out, and he felt ill. And then he went home, and I think when he had a shower or something like that, it stung, and he showed his wife, and in the photographs, you could see quite plainly quite a great big scratch down his back. And I mean, if you want to see it, guys, go on TripAdvisor, because his wife posted the photograph on TripAdvisor, which, you know. And I got a 5-star review.
Oh, that's all right then.
I know. Not for him. I was not responsible for the scratching. But it's a creepy story, though.
Yeah, it's quite creepy.
Because people do get that phenomena. And people say they do it to themselves, and well, maybe they do, but I don't think everybody doing it to themselves. Who knows?
These are just some of the stories from Edinburgh, a place where we're actually living in now. And the more we looked into it, and the more we realised how many stories are tied to the place we walk past all the time. So in the next episode, we're sticking with Edinburgh and getting it into a few more that stood out to us.
I keep the hallway light on, but the shadows never fade. Every corner whispers secrets of the choices that I made. There's a tapping at the window, though the wind is standing still, and a chill runs down my spine like something moving at its will. I tell myself it's nothing, just the creaking of the floor. But every night the silence feels louder than before. Lights on, still scared. You can't hide from what's already here. Can't run, can't breathe. Something in the dark remembers me. No matter what I do, that feeling doesn't go away. Lights on, still scared. The hauntings never fail. There's a shadow in the doorway where I swear no shadow should be, and it moves just like a memory I'm too afraid to see. Every picture on the wall seems to watch me as I pass, like they're waiting for the moment when my courage doesn't last. I whisper little prayers to keep the nightmares from my bed, but something sits beside me, breathing echoes in my head. Lights on, still scared. You can't hide from what's already here. Can't run, can't breathe. Something in the dark remembers me. No matter what I do, that feeling doesn't go away. Lights on, still scared. The hauntings never fade. Maybe it's just trauma, maybe ghosts